Picture yourself in the highest seats of a giant arena, watching the championship event, when the announcer yells they will airdrop $10 million in new cash over the crowd. You look skyward, adrenaline surging, prepared to grab a fortune. But then you grasp the physics are against you. The blimp is fixed above the luxury suites. The billionaires, politicians, and corporate leaders simply open their windows and scoop up the money before it falls to the lower tiers. They are thrilled, and they head instantly to the exclusive club bar, the high-end vendors, and the private boutiques, purchasing every item at the original cost. They just became wealthier. They spent the new currency on tangible goods and property before the rest of the stadium knew what occurred. But what about you? You were stranded in the cheap seats. By the time the breeze carries those wrinkled bills to your level, the vendors have identified a crisis. They are sold out of everything, and to resupply, they must pay far more. They must hike prices severely to manage the sudden, concentrated demand the elites created. When you finally snag your first $100 bill, the $5 hot dog now costs $15, and the souvenir cap is unavailable. You did not grow richer, you were misled. The VIPs obtained goods at a deep, unmerited discount, and you, the diligent worker, paid a covert tax. This is the precise mechanical truth of our current economy. It clarifies why your grocery total has doubled, why home ownership is out of reach, and why the affluent seem to be in a different reality. It is named the Cantillon effect, and comprehending it is the sole method to avoid being the spectator in the cheap seats. I'm Andrew, and I devote excessive time analyzing data to understand why hard work no longer feels rewarding. If you feel you're on a treadmill that keeps accelerating while your income remains stagnant, be sure to click subscribe and give this video a like, because we will reveal the hidden engine of disparity. Here is a truth most miss about currency. It is not impartial. We often assume that if the state prints $1 trillion, every account increases a small fraction and prices adjust immediately. That is a fantasy. In the 18th century, a French-Irish financier named Richard Cantillon understood money is like a liquid. It emanates from a source, and where it lands initially matters more than the total volume. He observed that those nearest to the monarch, the bankers, the estate holders, the merchants supplying the palace, prospered when new gold entered the system, while the farmers and workers were devastated. That observation is more critical now than ever, because the monarch is now the Federal Reserve, and the new gold is digital credit, called quantitative easing or stimulus, which flows first to the biggest financial entities. When the central bank opts to inject money, they do not send you a check. They generate $1 trillion digitally and use it to purchase bonds from major commercial banks and investment firms. This means the new currency enters the ecosystem at the pyramid's peak. The earliest recipients, the banks, the conglomerates, the large fund managers, get to operate in a market where the money supply has expanded, but the costs of what they wish to purchase, like equities, luxury real estate, and raw materials, have not yet fully caught up. Examine the brutal arithmetic of this scenario. Visualize a phase where $1 trillion in new credit is infused into the banking sector. A major investment company gains access to this fresh capital at almost 0% interest. Because they are the first to handle this new money, they can use it to acquire 5,000 single-family homes, huge parcels of land, and shares in public corporations. They are essentially buying 2025 assets with 2025 money, but securing them at 2020 prices, guaranteeing massive unearned profits simply by standing beside the money printer. This generates what we term asset inflation, and it is the key reason the wealth gap is expanding into a chasm. If you are affluent with a portfolio of stocks and property, the Cantillon effect is your ally because the new money inflates the value of your existing holdings. But if you are a wage worker trading hours for dollars, you are victimized by the delay. As that money travels from the banks to corporations and finally to salaries, it leaves a path of inflation behind. This is where it becomes fascinating and arguably alarming for the average individual. By the time that money filters down to your boss to grant you a cost of living increase, the housing market has already skyrocketed because investment firms bought the community, and the stock market has hit records due to aggressive share buybacks financed by cheap credit. You are receiving the money last, meaning you receive it at its weakest purchasing power. It is a game of musical chairs, where the music ends and the working class finds the chairs were purchased by a hedge fund 10 minutes prior. This explains the specific, startling data point that while worker productivity has increased over 60% since 1979, real wages have only grown about 17%. That massive disparity is not merely corporate avarice, it is the structural outcome of the Cantillon effect, continually draining purchasing power from labor into assets. The psychological impact is profound because it manipulates you into believing you are not diligent enough. You check your savings account, which is nominally growing, yet you feel poorer because the benchmarks for a middle-class existence, a home, a reliable vehicle, college savings, are retreating faster than you can advance. This relentless degradation of purchasing power is why the Cantillon effect is best seen as a hidden inflation tax imposed on the poor and middle class. Because these groups spend a far greater share of their earnings on essentials, fuel, food, and housing, they are disproportionately hurt when prices for these basics rise due to the money flow. The wealthy, who spend less of their wealth on daily needs and more on assets, feel the price hikes far less. This effect, paired with the Diderot effect we covered before, creates an ideal financial tempest. The system pilfers your savings value via Cantillon, and society compels you to spend your remainder via Diderot. Now, you may think, all right, the game is fixed, so I should quit, right? Absolutely not. The purpose of understanding the Cantillon effect is not to discourage you. It is to provide you the schematic so you can quit playing a rigged game. You cannot halt the money waterfall, but you can reposition yourself to catch it. The greatest error people make is attempting to save their way to prosperity in a currency being diluted. If you hold your wealth mainly in cash, you are at the waterfall's base, letting inflation wash over and decay your effort. To succeed, you must act like the affluent. You must become an owner, not merely an earner. You must shift your capital into scarce assets that rise atop the tidal wave of printed money. This is why the wealthy favor real estate, broad market index funds, and even specific commodities. These are assets that cannot be created with a keystroke. When the money supply grows, the value of these assets increases to mirror the new reality. By owning them, you are insulating yourself against the dilution of your salary. Additionally, you must comprehend the power of fixed-rate debt during inflation. When you borrow money at a fixed rate to buy an appreciating asset, you are essentially betting against the dollar. You are repaying the bank with future dollars that are worth less than those you borrowed. The system is engineered to penalize savers and benefit asset-owning borrowers. It seems unjust, it seems unethical, but it is the fact. Do not allow your labor to be stolen by the monetary delay. Educate yourself, invest in durable assets, and move from the cheap seats. The final vital step is accelerating your income velocity. If your earnings are locked at a fixed hourly or yearly rate, you lose because your wage is the last component to adjust for inflation. You need to place yourself in high-demand sectors, develop rare skills, or ideally, own an enterprise where you can immediately raise your prices to reflect rising costs. Your labor is a commodity. Do not let its value be diluted. Cease being the late receiver who pays full price with devalued money and start positioning yourself as an early receiver who owns the assets that gain from the financial current. You now possess the knowledge. You can choose to stay in the nosebleed seats, or you can secure your spot on the field. Hit like if this video clarified something that has irritated you for years. Subscribe to Andrew for more methods to outmaneuver the system and stop paying the hidden inflation tax. I will see you in the next video.